All right. Insider trading is when a person has confidential information that is unpublished, price sensitive, and also known as UPSI. This person then takes that information and bets on or against stocks and securities to make a profit, creating an unfair advantage in the market amongst other investors, completely undermining the principle of a fair and transparent market. Thus, the reason that under federal law, it's 100% illegal to insider trade. Despite this law in place, though, along with the Stock Act, which forces members of Congress to disclose their trades, members of Congress have been at the spotlight of controversy, as on multiple occasions they have been caught either buying or selling off trades to companies, buying or selling off trades before major global events take place, such as COVID-19, government contracts taking place with large companies, including war stock companies, global conflicts, all of which disrupt the market, creating a conflict of interest amongst those trying to obtain confidential information before it reaches the public. Despite various investigations as well into members of Congress, the majority of which are found not guilty, and cases usually end up getting dropped despite public outcry. A resolution: the federal government must create new legislative law that directly prohibits members of Congress and their immediate family members from trading stock and securities while serving their term in office. This legislative law, once properly written, must be forced upon Congress to vote on in order to create change so that the bill doesn't get stuck. Despite members of Congress constantly denying accusations of insider trading, historical analysis points out that before the Stock Act was enacted, many members of Congress were seeing unusually high amounts of returns in their shares that they held when compared to the average retail investor. Evidence suggests that it's found that prior to the Stock Act, members of Congress earned significant and abnormal returns on their stock trades, and an increase in their holdings on the firm's stock positive predictions and the firm's likelihood of being acquired, as well as its revenue and earnings surprises. After the passage of the Stock Act, though, politicians exhibit no such informational advantage in trading or outperformance. This comes from Yang and Yang from 2019 in a research paper. Members of Congress show abnormal returns prior to the Stock Act when compared to the average retail trader. It suggests that congressmen were using confidential information to trade on the stock market to benefit their own financial interest. The Stock Act caused a disruption amongst politicians, specifically those which were seeing abnormal returns on their shares. The dissipation of politicians having significant returns on their shares held suggests that a conflict of interest was present due to the access politicians had on certain information, which was not available to the general public. Further information from a news outlet said Senator Richard Burr, a Republican, told his broker to sell off more than $1 million in stock a week before the 2020 coronavirus market crash. He called his brother-in-law, Gerald Fouth, immediately after. Fouth then called his wealth manager to sell off over $160,000 in stock. This comes from a Brochure 2022. Members of Congress receive confidential information before it reaches the public, so by selling off a large quantity of stock and then calling a relative to alert them to do the exact same thing, it suggests the information obtained was used to benefit their own financial interest and points towards insider trading. Additionally, knowledge of the economy coming to a halt or slowing down from COVID would indicate towards many investors of a market crash, even with those to little experience. It's important to note that using any non-public information obtained in government briefings for financial gain is in direct violation of the Stock Act, and tipping off others on non-public information for financial benefits when it comes to stocks violates the Tipper Liability Act as well. Altogether, this suggests that there is a hole within government, and it suggests that even today, it's in our present time, there are people still insider trading, or there are signs that are suggesting they are. Despite the issue mainly revolving around members of Congress, it's apparent that this issue also involves their immediate family members and those around them, as trades are taken not only by the politicians themselves, but also their spouses and immediate family. This suggests that congressmen are sharing information obtained in briefings to benefit financially, creating a really large conflict of interest and a risk to national security. Further information shows that Loeffler and her husband, who is a CEO of a company that owns partially the New York Stock Exchange, dumped millions of dollars into shares. She attended a closed-door Senate briefing on coronavirus in January. The couple also picked up investments in companies that have benefited during the pandemic. Versailles is the author of this, and it was posted 2020. Members of Congress, along with their immediate family members, should not be allowed to trade stock or disclose the information they hear within the briefings to any member of the public, as it creates major conflicts of interest, distrust amongst the general public towards the government. Additionally, further information to back this states that Nancy Pelosi's husband dumped 2,000 shares of Visa in July, just weeks before the payments giant was sued by the U.S. Department of Justice, the DOJ, for monopolizing the debts market. This came from a news outlet, 2024 or 2023. By members of Congress having access to confidential information that can alter financial markets and the economy, it creates a big conflict of interest of especially when the information can make millions, because this is highly important that both members of Congress and their immediate family and this is why it's highly important when members of Congress and their immediate family are collectively prohibited from trading stock. And it's once again important to understand that without the Stock Act, there wouldn't be any law recognizing or keeping congressmen in check with the information they possess, as it recognizes the financial power in their knowledge. Although the Stock Act addresses the issue, it never completely solved it, as the evidence already presented shows that members of Congress have continuously been held loose on a leash so long as they follow a few rules. And the reason it's faced so much backlash and criticism from critics is because of this. Now, because of this all, though, in order to find a proper solution, it's important that new legislative law is created in order to prevent the conflict of interest from being present within our government. The issue, too, resolves around the fact that it's up to Congress to come up with this legislative law to create the new law and then vote on it. See, there's bias now. Now, further evidence states the report comes as several bipartisan measures aimed at banning trading stocks of individual companies by members of Congress appear to have stalled. Despite overwhelming public support, a total of 11 bills have been proposed by lawmakers since 2022, but none of which have made it to a vote. This comes from Hall and Garcia from 2025 news article. Creating any form of legislation that directly targets the entirety of Congress instantly becomes difficult to pass. And this is because the same legislation they vote on directly prohibits them and their immediate family members from profiting off the stock market while in office, which is how it should be. Public service is a public trust. This comes from the U.S. Office of Ethics. Public service is a public trust. Each employee has the responsibility to the United States government and its citizens to place loyalty to the Constitution, laws, and ethical principles above private gain, to ensure that every citizen can have complete confidence and integrity within the federal government. It's always important to remember that members of Congress are elected by the people of the United States of America, and that power granted to them can always be taken away. And it's extremely important they use this power granted to them to better the interest of the people rather than their individual financial interest. The U.S. ethics made these standards for members of Congress to follow so that they understand serving the American people and the power granted to them is and within their service is all privilege, and this should not be taken advantage of whatsoever, especially for financial gain. Although not every member within Congress is being found guilty or suspicious of insider trading, it has become apparent that it's still enough to turn heads. Because of this, it's now necessary that new legislative laws created to ensure that politicians work for the American people's interest, not their own. Thus, as more and more signs point to the power being taken advantage of, the power granted to them being taken advantage of, it's necessary that new legislative law is created to prevent this. In opposition to my resolution, one may argue that my solution to prohibit lawmakers along with their family members from trading stock is an unnecessary ban. Some may even go as far as say because of this ban, it may discourage people from wanting to hold a seat in government, especially business owners or those that like to constantly invest, which I think is quite funny. In conclusion, with the evidence I've collectively presented, it's apparent that new legislative law needs to be written. It's necessary that prohibits the congressman and their immediate family members from trading stock while they serve their term in office. In doing so, congressmen will be less likely to act out for their own personal financial interest and more for the American people's interest, in turn kicking out those in government that are only there for the benefits and power that comes with the position. Replacing people in power with people that actually love doing their job and love the government. This new legislative law is extremely important, as the current Stock Act, despite having good intent, is not fulfilling its purpose, as some congressmen continuously attempt to either insider trade or take actions that suggest they may be insider trading. Once again, creating this new legislative law is very important for the American people interest, as it will put them first instead of a congressman's financial interest first. And It's important to mention that the solution will not work unless the final vote is held within a national election, or if people pressure lawmakers heavily through lobbyist groups. Thank you guys for your time.